Alright, Geordie Prepper here, welcome to another news video. We're going to jump straight into this plane crash which happened in Ukraine. Russia and Ukraine are both blaming each other for it. The aircraft was shut down and it was carrying military personnel and crew and also POWs which were being returned. This is part of a deal. The crash has triggered a spate of claims and counterclaims, and they're both saying that each other shut it down. They haven't provided any evidence yet, either side, to back their claims, but you know, this is just something which has caused more tension, more conflict in the area, and obviously these 65 POWs have lost their lives, and you know, this is something which just makes the whole situation there just even the more tragic, you know. It's but it's something to think about if you're in a prepper group. If something happens in your group and there's accusations from two different parties, how are you going to deal with that? Who's going to be the intermediary? And what sort of evidence are you going to consider from each side? And what's going to be the outcome? And, you know, what's going to be the punishment? So we're going to Kenya now. Government and the president have been dealt a blow by the High Court of the country because they've basically halted this plan to send 1,000 police officers to Haiti to fight gangs and restore peace. But the High Court, in the ruling, he's basically said that the Constitution only allows members of the Kenya Defence Forces, which is the Kenyan Army, Kenyan Air Force and Navy, to be deployed to keep the peace outside of Kenya. A High Court in the country is basically stuck by the law of the land. And I think, you know, if more places did this, then there would be a lot more protection for everything that happens in the country, you know, even for the ordinary citizens. Imagine if the British Constitution, the protections that affords, imagine how much better it would be for the Englishman if the United States Constitution was adhered to and the rights that are respected in there were protected and the courts upheld those protections. Imagine how much better protected the average individual in these countries would be. So these 1,000 police officers possibly been spared their lives in a lot of cases, because if they're going into a high conflict situation with gangs and where there's a lot of violence, then, you know, potentially some of them would have been injured or even killed. Moving on to Mali now, there's a crucial peace deal with rebels has came to an end. It was to stem violence and a rebellion in the north of the country. Basically started in about 2012. And it was started by Tuareg rebels, and they wanted to create an independent state of Azawad in northern Mali. And it threw the nation into violent conflict for over a decade. In 2012, they dislodged the Malian military from the town of Kidal. That basically started the destabilization. But in 2015, there was a peace deal brokered. And they're basically saying that it's ended because the rebels have failed to comply with the terms. There's been acts of hostility, so it looks like it's not going to get renewed. Just another area in the world right now where conflict is starting. Agreements and deals are just being shredded. They're not being renewed, and these smaller conflicts in these countries. And I'm telling you guys, keep an eye on Africa. It's going to have ramifications in the future. What happens on this continent. So the United Nations Court has ruled on Israel's military action in Gaza. This is something that's going to be talked about a lot in the mainstream media. International Court of Justice has said to Israel that they've got to take all measures necessary to prevent genocide in Gaza. Now, Israel's doing this operation under the guise of a defensive strategy. We didn't start the fight, but we're sure as hell going to end it. And obviously, you know, as part of that, unfortunately, a lot of civilians have been caught in between the two sides. They've always stated against Hamas that they've used the Israelis that they've captured as human shields, and indeed used locations and even the Palestinian people as human shields. And obviously this has increased the amount of civilian collateral damage which has happened. But this judgment by the International Court has basically said that they've got to do everything in their power to stop genocide and unnecessary loss of life. But they're saying here that the judges stopped short of ordering for a ceasefire. I think now that they're this far in the campaign, it would just be better if it just ends, and hopefully that ends the unnecessary loss of life as well. And on to the Middle East and the Red Sea area now, particularly in the Gulf of Aden. The United States have shot down another anti-ship ballistic missile. Its intended target seemed to have been the USS Carney, but they shot it down and there's no injuries or damage reported on the actual ship itself. US and its allies attacked targets in Yemen. The Houthis attacking military targets belonging to those countries now. And then in related news, they're saying that the freight through the Suez Canal has dropped by 45%. The shipping companies have diverted ships from the Red Sea since the Houthi movement. 39% fewer ships than at the start of December transited the canal, leading to a 45% decline in freight tonnage. The Suez Canal handles 12 to 15% of global trade and 25 to 30% of container traffic. I mean, that's not an insignificant amount. That's going to cause problems, and it is causing problems, obviously, for freight. On to Turkey now, and Erdogan's saying that he's waiting for a US decision on F-16s after approving Sweden's NATO bid. So we were talking about this in the last news report, but it seems that there was a reason why they were taking so long on the Sweden's bid. They're basically saying here that Erdogan is expecting the United States to make a decision about the sale of F-16 fighter jets, and he's basically leveraging and saying that, oh yeah, we've approved Sweden to NATO, so give us our jets. We want to buy these jets off you now, and we also want our old stock to be replaced. And he's linked his approval of Sweden's accession to the security organization to the sale of the F-16s. But the US officials are trying to separate the two. They're saying, no, one's got nothing to do with the other. But now that Turkey's approved Sweden's bid to NATO, it seems that they're going to be putting pressure on the United States to sell them these F-16s. Turkey's Aegean Air Force has suffered from Ankara's expulsion from the US-led F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program in 2019. This was in response to Erdogan's decision to acquire an advanced Russian missile defense system. And they viewed that system as an operational security threat, so they weren't going to give them the F-35s. I don't think it's set in stone, Turkey's allegiance. I think it's still on the fence, and I think we still might see something from Turkey in the future, maybe something quite surprising. Back to Britain now, and Scotland's going to ban disposable vapes alongside the rest of Britain. Now, this is really good news because these disposable vapes are just a menace. And you see people smoking these vapes, and some of them are small, some of them are like pretty big, and some of them just look like whistles. But you always see a lot of the discarded ones around, and all these youngsters, look at that, they think it's cool, All this trash here, all these vapes, not just the actual vape itself, but the packaging. But this is going to be a huge health crisis in the future. It's really bad, and it's really out of control as well. You see people around town, 12, 13-year-olds or younger, puffing away vaping, thinking it's cool. And also they're thinking it's acceptable because smoking's obviously been demonized and found to be a massive health risk. And then vaping came in and was cool because it's only vaping, And then now that's obviously a lot of health data is coming out about that. So in the future, we're going to see a massive health crisis with all this vaping. This next article we're looking at, this is a big problem worldwide, basically. This was a survey done by a British charity called Shelter. It's saying that there's intense pressures associated with housing costs in England at the minute. More than a fifth of people are struggling to keep the roof over their heads. With the cost of living and everything going up, it's not just a phenomenon which is exclusive to Britain. People all around the world are experiencing this, and just every single week at times there's an extra thing which has gone up in price. and they're saying that people can get in touch with them. So if you are struggling, obviously, you know, just the best thing is just to not bottle it up, you know, reach out to these types of organizations because they can help. Okay, so on to another topic. We might as well just bring this up now because I think obviously I'm doing these news videos 3 times a week. I think if they start becoming popular, there may be people who are watching who want to start giving me some reports about what they're seeing. So if you would like to send me anything, the email address is on screen now. You can send me as much information or as little information as you want. And if you just want to give me a little bit of background to yourself, obviously, you know, maintain OPSEC. I'm not really interested in who you are, what you do. But if you give legitimate and credible information on the email address, you might just want to say, you know, what your profession is, what your experience and your background is. So obviously I can see that this isn't just an email from Joe Nobody who's got no experience in what they're reporting. But if we can get information out there that's credible and actionable, then it's just better for the community, obviously, as a whole. I just want to say now, thanks in advance for anything that you do send, because obviously it really could make a difference to some people, what you do broadcast and, you know, help to spread to the community. That's the end of today's Prepper News. Thanks very much for watching. Be safe, be prepared, and I'll see you in the next broadcast. This has been Geordie Prepper, signing out.